Footage of NBA players fleeing the United States after gambling scandal. Huge arrests. What if I told you that some of your favorite NBA stars were just caught in one of the biggest criminal scandals in sports history? Federal agents' mafia connections, insider betting, and millions in rigged poker games. This isn't a movie, it's real life. The FBI says it's the insider trading saga of basketball, and the fallout could destroy careers and rewrite the league's legacy forever. Stay with us as we uncover every shocking detail and expose how deep this conspiracy really goes. You're watching Legends of Black Excellence. Don't blink because it's about to get wild. Nationwide FBI takedown operation, nothing but bet exposed. In an unprecedented scene that rippled through both law enforcement and professional sports, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, in coordination with the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York, unveiled one of the largest federal crackdowns in modern athletic history. The investigation, codenamed Operation Nothing But Bet, marked a turning point in how the government confronts the growing shadow of illegal gambling and organized crime within sports. At dawn on October 23, 2025, agents carried out a synchronized sweep across 11 states, executing warrants that culminated in the arrest of 34 defendants. This was not a minor scandal. It was a multi-layered conspiracy that merged insider wagering, mob protection rackets, and digital money laundering into a single, sprawling network. Standing before a wall of FBI SEALs in Lower Manhattan, Director Kash Patel called the operation a decisive strike against corruption that dared to intertwine professional competition with organized crime. His tone was cold and deliberate as he laid out the scope of the inquiry: years of surveillance, hundreds of hours of intercepted communications, and millions in tainted transactions funneled through offshore betting accounts. Patel emphasized that the arrests weren't symbolic. "We dismantled a system that turned the purity of sport into a financial pipeline for criminals," he said. The director described how his agents had traced encrypted payment chains, unmasking intermediaries who connected bookmakers to players, coaches, and even casino fixers tied to New York's most notorious families. On the prosecutorial side, U.S. Attorney Joseph Nocella Jr. detailed the legal architecture behind the indictments. Filed in two separate federal cases, one targeting sports manipulation and another focusing on rigged poker circuits. The documents allege violations ranging from wire fraud and money laundering conspiracy to extortion and illegal gambling. Nocella's voice carried the weight of disbelief. This was not a group of reckless bettors. This was an enterprise built with the discipline of organized crime and the access of professional athletes. According to court filings, the schemes collectively generated tens of millions of dollars over a 5-year span, with proceeds laundered through cryptocurrency exchanges, shell corporations, and coded cash drops. Behind the polished podiums and federal jargon loomed a familiar set of names that have haunted New York for generations: the Bonanno, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese syndicates. Investigators allege that these four mafia clans supplied the infrastructure, providing debt collection, physical enforcement, and money-washing routes that made the betting empire nearly untouchable. Each family controlled a specific territory. The Bonannos oversaw Manhattan's underground poker dens. The Gambinos handled Miami's high roller circuit. The Genoveses specialized in laundering through construction fronts, and the Luccheses managed the West Coast cash transfers. Their collaboration under one operation was unprecedented, a temporary alliance forged not out of loyalty, but out of greed for the booming sports wagering economy. As helicopters hovered over courthouses and armored vans ferried suspects into custody, the spectacle captivated the nation. Reporters crowded outside the Eastern District Courthouse while federal officers boxed up seized evidence laptops, betting ledgers, luxury watches, and stacks of $100 bills bound with rubber bands. Though rumors on social media exaggerated claims of players fleeing the country, the verified reality was equally cinematic: an 11-state raid that exposed the deepest intersection yet between the NBA and organized crime. What began as whispers of suspicious wagers had erupted into a full-scale federal saga. Operation Nothing But Bet wasn't just a law enforcement triumph. It was a warning shot echoing through locker rooms and boardrooms alike, a message that even in the glittering world of professional basketball, no one is beyond the reach of justice. NBA stars arrested. Rozier, Billups, and Jones at the center of scandal. The morning of October 23, 2025, began like any other in the NBA's young season. But by afternoon, the headlines had shattered the calm. Federal agents announced the arrests of three high-profile basketball figures, Terry Rozier, Chauncey Billups, and Damon Jones. Each name carried weight. Each story unfolded like a movie script filled with betrayal, greed, and the erosion of trust inside the sport's most sacred spaces. The FBI's press briefing painted a chilling picture: athletes and coaches using privileged access to manipulate outcomes, leak confidential data, and infiltrate the underground gambling world. The charges, wire fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering, could mean up to 20 years in prison per count, transforming beloved figures into central characters in one of the largest corruption cases in NBA history. Terry Rozier, known to fans as Scary Terry, was the first to fall. According to prosecutors, while playing for the Charlotte Hornets, he allegedly provided private details about player availability and injury status to a betting ring that used this intelligence for illegal wagers. The most striking example came during a March 2023 matchup against the New Orleans Pelicans, when Rozier supposedly faked an injury after only 9 minutes on the court. Bettors already tipped off placed nearly $250,000 in underbets on his performance stats and cashed in handsomely when he exited early. The indictment accuses Rozier of repeating this pattern across multiple games, laundering his portion of the profits through peer-to-peer payment apps and offshore crypto wallets. Once heralded for his resilience and flair, he now faces a battle not on hardwood floors, but in federal courtrooms. The next name stunned even veteran sports reporters: Chauncey Billups, Hall of Famer and head coach of the Portland Trail Blazers. For decades, Billups embodied leadership and integrity. Now investigators allege he lent that same credibility to a mafia-controlled poker ring. Acting as what prosecutors described as a face card, he was said to have attracted high-net-worth individuals to exclusive private games held in New York, Miami, Las Vegas, and the Hamptons tables, secretly fitted with hidden cameras, infrared readers, and X-ray surfaces capable of revealing every opponent's hand. Billups's presence offered authenticity to a fraud worth more than $7 million in stolen bets. Though his defense insists he was unaware of the deception federal agents maintain, he knowingly profited from rigged matches long before stepping into the coaching role. His sudden fall from a respected tactician to an accused conspirator sent shockwaves through locker rooms across the league. Then came Damon Jones, the former player and close confidant of LeBron James, whose name surfaced in both indictments. Investigators claim Jones played a double game facilitating betting operations tied to NBA injury reports, while simultaneously participating in those crooked poker sessions alongside Billups. One federal affidavit even references Player 3, later identified by sources as LeBron James, whose ankle injury information was allegedly sold by Jones before a February 2023 Lakers-Bucks matchup. Another incident involved insider tips about Anthony Davis and his limited playing minutes used to place six-figure wagers before the details became public. Prosecutors described Jones as a bridge between professional athletes and organized gambling networks, a role that turned personal friendships into criminal leverage. For the league's most recognizable stars, the revelations cut deep. LeBron James and Anthony Davis, though not accused of wrongdoing, found themselves involuntary participants, victims of betrayal by someone they trusted. LeBron's camp has remained silent, while Davis reportedly called the situation heartbreaking. The irony was painful. Players celebrated for excellence and discipline were now linked, however indirectly, to schemes undermining the sport's credibility. Their names appearing in federal documents underscored how deeply the contamination reached, extending beyond offenders to touch the game's very symbols of success. As the indictments circulated and the accused surrendered their passports, the NBA faced an existential crisis. What began as whispers of suspicious betting patterns had grown into a full-fledged scandal involving revered figures and lifelong bonds shattered by greed. Commissioner statements promised cooperation, yet the damage was already visible in headlines and public disbelief. The arrests of Rozier, Billups, and Jones weren't isolated missteps. They were the flashpoint of a reckoning that forced basketball to confront an uncomfortable truth: when trust becomes currency, even the brightest stars can cast the darkest shadows. Mafia connections unveiled. The four families behind the scheme. When the FBI first uncovered evidence linking professional basketball figures to organized crime, few believed the rumors could be true. Yet as the details emerged from sealed indictments in New York, the scale of the entanglement became undeniable. At the center stood Kash Patel, the firm-voiced director of the Bureau, who described the case as a convergence of athletic privilege and criminal enterprise. His statement revealed that the betting and poker schemes weren't random acts of greed. They were built upon the foundation of four of America's most infamous syndicates, the Bonanno, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese families. These organizations, long associated with racketeering and extortion, had allegedly found a new profit stream inside the world of legalized sports wagering. What began as whispers in private card rooms evolved into a multi-million-dollar network that exploited both gamblers and athletes alike. Patel explained that agents had spent years tracing encrypted communications and following cash transfers through offshore accounts, only to find familiar mob fingerprints on every transaction. The Bonanno organization reportedly oversaw poker operations in upscale Manhattan lofts, where celebrity appearances were used as bait for wealthy victims. The Gambino family, notorious for its control of dock unions decades earlier, allegedly managed security and debt collection, ensuring compliance through threats of physical harm. The Genovese clan took responsibility for laundering illicit earnings through construction fronts and shell real estate holdings, while the Lucchese group funneled money through West Coast casinos and cryptocurrency exchanges. Together, these four entities operated with remarkable coordination, something investigators called a rare alliance among rivals forged purely by profit and protected by fear. Standing beside Patel at the press briefing, U.S. Attorney Joseph Nocella Jr. expanded on the gravity of the situation. His office had obtained testimony from witnesses inside the ring, dealers, couriers, and low-level bookmakers who described a tightly structured operation where every role was defined, every dollar tracked. This was not a spontaneous partnership, Nocella asserted. It was a calculated infiltration of professional sport by organized crime. According to the prosecution, the combined operations across poker and insider betting generated over $40 million in illicit revenue during a 5-year window. The mafia families provided the muscle, while insiders within the league supplied information and public legitimacy. The resulting ecosystem blurred the boundary between entertainment and criminality in ways unseen since the 1970s. Court documents referenced numerous unidentified defendants described only by their aliases, men known on the streets as Flapper Big Bruce and the Wrestler. These individuals, prosecutors claimed, acted as enforcers who handled debts through intimidation, vandalism, and in one instance, an armed robbery tied to the theft of a specialized poker shuffling device. Victims who failed to repay gambling losses allegedly faced home invasions and business sabotage. In taped phone calls, one defendant bragged, "Nobody says no to the families." It was this atmosphere of fear that allowed the operation to thrive unchecked, even as suspicious betting patterns caught the attention of gaming regulators. The exposure of these connections sent shockwaves beyond sports. For decades, the NBA had sought to separate itself from any hint of organized crime, emphasizing integrity and transparency. Yet this case revealed a different reality, one where criminal syndicates still adapt, exploiting the digital age with as much ruthlessness as in the past. As Patel concluded in his statement, "The names may change, the methods may evolve, but the motive remains the same: control and profit." With arrests made and trials pending, the once invisible bridge between Manhattan's mob bosses and America's basketball courts had finally been dragged into the light, exposing a network whose reach extended from smoky poker basements to the polished arenas of the NBA. The arrests, court hearings, and NBA's immediate response. The morning raids began before sunrise. Federal agents moved with precision, serving warrants across 3 states as part of the sweeping gambling and fraud investigation. In Orlando, Florida, authorities located Terry Rozier at a luxury downtown hotel where his team had just wrapped up its season opener. Witnesses described a calm but tense scene. Rozier, still in team-issued warm-ups, quietly surrendered without resistance. Hours later, on the opposite coast, Chauncey Billups was taken into custody at his lakeside residence in Lake Oswego, Oregon, while his family watched federal vehicles line the driveway. And in California, former player and assistant coach Damon Jones was intercepted outside a private training facility, detained under similar charges. Within a single day, 3 different time zones saw 3 major NBA figures brought under federal control, signaling that the investigation had officially reached its public breaking point. Court documents revealed that each arrest followed weeks of surveillance and coordinated timing meant to prevent communication between defendants. After being read their rights, all 3 were transported to federal holding facilities for initial processing. Bail hearings followed swiftly. Rozier was granted release after posting his $6 million Florida property as collateral. His conditions included travel restrictions within the continental United States and a prohibition on all forms of gambling. Billups, appearing before a federal magistrate in Portland, surrendered his passport and was issued a similar no-gambling clause pending trial. Jones faced a slightly stricter arrangement due to his alleged connection to both conspiracies. He remained in temporary custody before securing bond through a Los Angeles court. For each, the message from prosecutors was unmistakable. These were not league disciplinary matters, but federal crimes carrying potential decades-long sentences. The response from the National Basketball Association was immediate and measured. Within hours, Commissioner Adam Silver released a somber statement expressing deep concern and profound disappointment. He emphasized that the allegations, if proven true, would represent a direct threat to the integrity on which the game depends. League headquarters in New York convened an emergency ethics meeting reviewing protocols for player and staff education on gambling restrictions. Silver also announced that both Rozier and Billups were placed on administrative leave while interim arrangements were made for team operations. Reporters noted the commissioner's demeanor: less outrage, more sorrow, as he acknowledged that the scandal struck at the very heart of competition. His closing remark captured the anxiety reverberating through arenas nationwide. Every fan deserves to believe that what happens on the court is real. In Portland, the organization moved quickly to stabilize its coaching staff. Assistant coach Tiago Splitter, a former NBA champion known for his analytical approach, was named acting head coach of the Trailblazers. Team executives described the appointment as temporary but necessary to maintain focus amid public scrutiny. Players were instructed to avoid commenting publicly, while front office staff fielded non-stop inquiries from national outlets. Meanwhile, the Miami Heat issued a brief note echoing league sentiment and vowing full cooperation with authorities. Across social media, reactions ranged from disbelief to outrage, with fans questioning how such conduct could have slipped through the league's compliance systems. Amid the turbulence, the National Basketball Players Association, NBPA, stepped forward to balance accountability with due process. In its official statement, the union reaffirmed that the integrity of the sport remains paramount, yet insisted that every member is entitled to a fair and impartial judicial process. The NBPA also cautioned against trial by media, emphasizing that public speculation could taint ongoing proceedings. Behind the scenes, legal advisors for both the league and the union began coordinating to ensure the accused retained access to representation and mental health support. Still, as the first weekend games tipped off under a cloud of scandal, the empty seats where Rozier and Billups once stood symbolized more than absence. They reflected a league grappling with disbelief. The arrests had not only shaken reputations, but also challenged basketball's most fundamental promise that integrity once lost is the hardest victory to reclaim. Political reactions and legal defense statements emerge. As the indictments sent tremors through the sports world, the legal defense teams quickly moved to challenge the sweeping narrative crafted by federal prosecutors. Chris Haywood, the attorney representing Chauncey Billups, stood before reporters outside the Portland federal courthouse, his tone measured yet firm. "My client has spent his life upholding values of integrity and leadership," he said. He would never jeopardize his family or legacy for something as reckless as a card game. Haywood framed the case as an overreach, arguing that prosecutors had conflated celebrity presence with criminal participation. His statements resonated with some observers who viewed Billups as an unlikely conspirator, but others saw them as the familiar playbook of damage control, assert moral character, first address evidence later. On the East Coast, Jim Trusty defense counsel for Terry Rozier delivered a more aggressive rebuttal. He accused the government of pursuing publicity rather than justice, claiming that the indictment relied heavily on spectacularly unreliable informants. Speaking to assembled media outside the federal building in Orlando, Trusty insisted that his client had already been cleared by league investigators nearly 2 years prior. They wanted the optics of handcuffs on a professional athlete, he charged, implying that federal prosecutors were seeking headlines rather than truth. Despite the fiery tone, his remarks underscored a key contradiction. If Rozier had once passed internal NBA scrutiny, why had the FBI found cause to reopen the case? That tension became a flashpoint for debate in sports media and legal circles alike. Federal officials, however, were quick to push back. U.S. Attorney Joseph Nocella Jr. issued a pointed response the following day, reminding the public that indictments are not built on rumor. "We move when the evidence demands it," he stated, noting that the case involved corroborated digital communications, financial records, and multiple cooperating witnesses. Nocella rejected any suggestion of political motivation, emphasizing that both state and federal agencies had validated the findings independently. His comments aimed not only to preserve prosecutorial credibility, but also to reassure a skeptical public that the investigation's foundation was solid and methodical, not opportunistic. Beyond the legal skirmishes, the scandal caught the attention of Washington lawmakers. Senator Richard Blumenthal, long a critic of the expanding sports betting industry, seized the moment to renew his call for national regulatory standards. Speaking on Capitol Hill, he warned the absence of federal guardrails has opened the door for precisely this kind of corruption. His remarks sparked bipartisan interest, with members of both parties acknowledging the need for unified oversight across states. Echoing his concern, the House Committee on Energy and Commerce issued a formal letter to NBA Commissioner Adam Silver requesting a comprehensive briefing on gambling safeguards, data sharing with sportsbooks, and potential reforms. As the headlines evolved from scandal to governance, the conversation transcended basketball. Pundits debated whether professional leagues had grown too intertwined with betting partners to ensure genuine transparency. Advocacy groups urged Congress to impose stricter advertising and monitoring rules for all major sports. What began as a courtroom drama was now a national policy debate bridging the worlds of athletics, justice, and public trust. Whether reform follows remains uncertain, but the message from lawmakers was unmistakable. The game's future integrity can no longer depend solely on the leagues. It now lies under the watchful eye of Congress. Operation Royal Flush: high-stakes poker and mafia infiltration. When federal prosecutors unveiled the second half of the massive investigation dubbed Operation Royal Flush, the story took an even darker turn. What began as a betting probe within basketball circles unraveled into a cinematic world of high-stakes poker mob-engineered deception and technological trickery So advanced, it blurred the line between entertainment and espionage. Court filings revealed that these underground games weren't just casual gatherings of wealthy gamblers, they were meticulously choreographed frauds. The matches took place in luxury penthouses, private clubs in Manhattan, and lavish estates across Miami, Las Vegas, and the Hamptons, drawing athletes, actors, and investors under the illusion of exclusivity. At the heart of it, investigators found the fingerprints of New York's organized crime families, and a cast of characters whose nicknames could have been lifted from a gangster script: The Wrestler, Matthew Dadino Juice, Thomas Gallardo, Big Bruce Flapper, Poker, and Pookie. Their mission was simple: rig the tables, fleece the marks, and funnel the winnings back to the mob. The methods were breathtaking in their sophistication. According to the Justice Department, the conspirators employed X-ray poker tables marked decks visible only through special contact lenses and modified shufflers that scanned every card and transmitted data to hidden receivers off-site. One operative, nicknamed Flapper Poker, coordinated signals using subtle gestures, a tap on the glass, a twitch of a watch to cue which players held winning hands. Others served as dealers trained to manipulate cards mid-shuffle. Victims, often multimillionaires accustomed to risk, were unaware they were being outmaneuvered by technology invisible to the naked eye. Losses exceeded $7 million, and in at least 2 cases, extortion followed when players hesitated to settle their debts. "This was Ocean's 11 in real life," one investigator remarked, except the casino never knew it was being robbed. Amid these revelations, one name sent shockwaves beyond law enforcement circles: Kevin Garnett, Hall of Famer and NBA champion. The connection, first disclosed by journalist Pablo Torre, traced back to a 2019 private poker night in Los Angeles. Garnett, then years into retirement, attended the event at the invitation of acquaintances later indicted under the operation. Sources close to the investigation clarified that he was not accused of wrongdoing. Rather, he was viewed as a potential victim, an unknowing participant in a fixed game. Torre's exposé described Garnett as leaving early after sensing something off about the play dynamics. Federal officials later confirmed that he had cooperated fully, reinforcing that his appearance served only to demonstrate how deeply the criminal network had penetrated legitimate social circles. Ironically, fans recalled his role in Uncut Gems, where he portrayed a version of himself entangled in gambling chaos, a movie that now seemed prophetic. U.S. Attorney Joseph Nocella Jr. returned to the podium to emphasize that the poker component represented only the tip of the iceberg. His remarks underscored how the investigation, spanning 4 years, drew in multiple agencies, including Homeland Security and the NYPD's Organized Crime Control Bureau. Nocella explained that flipped insiders and wiretapped conversations had exposed the machinery of Deceit 1, where celebrity presence was weaponized to lure prey, while mafia operatives orchestrated every card played. The indictment's language painted a chilling portrait of collaboration between mob enforcers and a select group of facilitators who monetized fame for criminal profit. As trials approached, prosecutors hinted that further names could surface, widening the scandal's reach. Operation Royal Flush thus stood as a stark reminder of how glamour, greed, and technology had fused into a criminal ecosystem, one capable of drawing even sports legends into its orbit, not as villains, but as pawns in a game they never realized was rigged from the very first deal. Massive fallout. The NBA faces integrity and financial crisis. The aftermath of the sweeping gambling probe left the National Basketball Association facing a reckoning unlike any in its modern history. Commissioner Adam Silver, known for his calm pragmatism, appeared visibly shaken in his first public address following the arrests. Standing before a packed room of reporters, he admitted the events had left a pit in his stomach and warned that the scandal could inflict long-term damage on the league's credibility. Silver pledged immediate reform, enhanced monitoring of betting activity, mandatory disclosure of injury data, and closer cooperation with federal agencies. His tone balanced regret with determination. "The integrity of the game is not negotiable," he declared. But even as he outlined new safeguards, questions mounted over how the league's internal compliance systems had failed to detect such misconduct sooner. Public reaction was equally unforgiving. Analysts compared the situation to the Jontay Porter case, which had rocked the league just a year earlier. Porter, then a young forward for the Toronto Raptors, became the first active player in 70 years to receive a lifetime ban after admitting to sharing insider information tied to betting on his own games. At the time, Silver had cited the expulsion as proof that the NBA took gambling violations seriously. Yet the 2025 scandal, with its scale and mafia connections, exposed the limits of those earlier measures. Fans flooded social media demanding harsher oversight, while sponsors quietly began reviewing their contracts. The perception that gambling had seeped into locker rooms and coaching staffs undermined the sense of fair play that professional basketball depends upon. For many, Porter's ban was no longer viewed as an isolated cautionary tale. It had become the prelude to a systemic collapse in trust. The financial repercussions extended beyond reputation. Two of the league's largest betting partners, DraftKings and FanDuel, faced mounting criticism for their role in fueling the culture of constant wagering. Advocacy groups and state legislators called for temporary boycotts and stricter auditing of betting data shared between sportsbooks and sports leagues. Industry experts warned that sponsorship losses and decreased consumer confidence could jeopardize multi-billion-dollar broadcast deals signed only months earlier. The controversy also reignited debates about the ethical conflict inherent in professional leagues profiting from gambling partnerships while simultaneously policing player behavior. What had once been marketed as fan engagement was now being reframed as a moral hazard. Political figures soon joined the chorus demanding change. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine, whose state had been at the forefront of sports betting expansion, urged regulators to ban prop bets, individual wagers on player statistics that are most susceptible to manipulation. His call found support from several other governors and federal lawmakers who saw the NBA scandal as proof that legalized betting had outpaced its safeguards. In response, Silver announced a review of all betting-related sponsorships and a commitment to develop uniform integrity standards across all teams. Whether those reforms will be enough remains uncertain. What is clear is that the NBA, once admired as a model of modern governance, now stands at a crossroads, forced to rebuild its reputation, redefine its relationship with gambling, and convince a skeptical public that the game they love can still be trusted. Past scandals resurface, from Jontay Porter to Gilbert Arenas. Long before the FBI stormed arenas and seized betting ledgers in 2025, the warning signs had been there, scattered across nearly 2 decades of smaller but telling scandals. The NBA's history, though filled with triumph, has always carried undercurrents of moral testing where ambition and greed occasionally overpowered integrity. Among the earliest and most haunting precedents was the Tim Donaghy affair in 2007, a case that first cracked the illusion of absolute fairness in professional basketball. Donaghy, a veteran referee, admitted to placing wagers on games he officiated and leaking inside information to gamblers. His associates James Batista and Thomas Martino served as intermediaries, funneling bets through organized channels. Donaghy's 15-month prison sentence seemed to close that chapter, but the systemic vulnerabilities he exposed, the blurred boundaries between officiating data access and gambling temptation, would quietly linger for years, resurfacing in far more sophisticated forms by 2025. A decade later, another breach of trust emerged, not from referees or bettors, but from within the players' own ranks. Terrence Williams, a former Brooklyn Nets guard, engineered a sprawling healthcare fraud scheme between 2019 and 2021, exploiting the NBA Players Association insurance plan. Along with accomplices, Glenn Davis, Tony Allen, and Sebastian Telfair, he fabricated medical invoices and pocketed reimbursements for treatments that never occurred. The conspiracy, worth over $3.9 million, ultimately unraveled when the FBI uncovered falsified documentation and digital evidence of kickback payments. Williams received a 10-year federal sentence in 2023, while several co-defendants served lesser terms. Though unrelated to gambling, the scandal exposed how familiarity with league infrastructure could be weaponized for personal enrichment. For many inside the NBA, it was an uncomfortable foreshadowing of what could happen if players chose profit over principle. Then came Jontay Porter, whose actions in 2024 blurred the line between insider access and outright manipulation. The Toronto Raptors forward, burdened by debts reportedly exceeding $100,000, shared confidential health details and planned early exits from games to help accomplices cash in on prop bets. When the evidence surfaced, texts, betting slips, and sportsbook alerts, the NBA acted swiftly. Porter became the first active player since 1954 to receive a lifetime ban, while federal prosecutors charged 4 co-conspirators with wire fraud. At the time, the league called it a watershed moment, a declaration that zero tolerance for betting misconduct would preserve the sport's integrity. Yet within a year, the Rozier Billups-Jones saga erupted, proving that the rot ran deeper than any single offender. The same methods, fake injuries, insider tips. Hidden communication channels had merely evolved, not disappeared. Parallel to these, the case of Gilbert Arenas bridged the world of basketball and underground gaming culture. Between 2024 and 2025, the former All-Star faced investigation for hosting illegal high-stakes poker nights at his Los Angeles mansion. The games, featuring buy-ins exceeding $50,000, drew celebrities, financiers, and athletes alike. Federal agents later discovered ties between those sessions and the broader network implicated in Operation Royal Flush, connecting Arenas indirectly to figures such as Damon Jones, who allegedly acted as a recruiter. Although Arenas maintained that he merely rented his property, the association underscored how normalized high-stakes gambling had become within NBA circles. His indictment in mid-2025 served as a bridge linking personal vice to organized corruption, a precursor to the FBI's larger crackdown months later. Viewed collectively, these scandals form a grim lineage leading to the present crisis. From Donaghy's manipulated calls to Porter's insider bets and Williams's forged claims, each episode revealed a different facet of exploitation, one of authority, one of system, and one of access. The 2025 indictments merely unified them under a grander scale, pulling referees, players, and external syndicates into the same narrative of decay. In hindsight, the league's repeated assurances of reform appear reactive rather than preventative. What began as isolated acts of greed metastasized into an institutional epidemic. As the courts deliberate and new policies emerge, one truth has become unavoidable. Every unheeded lesson of the past laid the foundation for basketball's most devastating scandal yet. Shockwaves across media. Shaq Barkley and Kenny react. When news of the arrests reached the studios of Inside the NBA, the reaction was immediate and raw. Ernie Johnson, ever the composed anchor, could barely keep the discussion contained as his colleagues Shaquille O'Neal, Charles Barkley, and Kenny Smith unloaded a mixture of anger, disbelief, and sorrow. O'Neal's booming voice broke through first. "They knew the rules and did it anyway," he said, shaking his head in disappointment. "Every player gets warned every single year about this." His frustration wasn't theatrical. It came from lived experience, a sense of betrayal by peers who had jeopardized the credibility of a sport that had given them everything. Barkley, never one to hold back, was even harsher. "This isn't addiction. This is stupidity," he snapped. "You don't mess with the game. Period." The studio fell silent for a moment, the gravity of his words cutting through the usual banter. Kenny Smith took a different approach, offering a voice of empathy amid the outrage. He argued that gambling addiction should not be dismissed as mere greed. "When you're addicted, logic disappears," he explained, comparing it to athletes who play through injuries despite knowing the risks. His remarks sparked an on-air debate with Barkley, countering that addiction doesn't excuse corruption. It was a rare, unscripted clash between compassion and condemnation, exposing the moral complexity of a league now forced to confront its own vulnerability to temptation. Ernie Johnson, mediating as always, summarized the exchange. If this doesn't make the NBA look in the mirror, nothing will. That moment encapsulated what millions of fans felt. Shock, confusion, and the uneasy recognition that the scandal had stained something larger than the game itself. Beyond the studio lights, coaches and active players added their voices. Rick Carlisle, coach of the Indiana Pacers and president of the Coaches Association, described the scandal as a gut punch to everyone who wears a badge of professionalism. He revealed that the arrests came just one day after mandatory team briefings on betting regulations, deepening the sense of irony. J.J. Redick, now head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers, offered a measured tone. "We have to focus on accountability, not hysteria," he said, urging balance between justice and perspective. Among players, Jaylen Brown admitted feeling disillusioned, while veteran analyst Michael Thompson called it a tragedy of choice. For both men, the sadness outweighed the anger, the realization that the game they loved had once again been dragged into scandal. Meanwhile, the political reverberations continued. Hakeem Jeffries, Paul Tonko, and Richard Blumenthal renewed bipartisan calls for tighter oversight of sports betting, arguing that the NBA's growing dependence on gambling partnerships blurred ethical lines. It's time for Congress to act. Blumenthal declared framing reform as a matter of national integrity, not just league policy. The momentum for federal regulation began to build, with hearings proposed to examine how betting companies use player data and advertising. Corporate responses followed swiftly. FanDuel and DraftKings, both deeply embedded in NBA sponsorships, issued statements calling the allegations deeply concerning and reaffirming their commitment to fair play. Yet public cynicism was hard to erase. As hashtags demanding reform trended across social platforms, one sentiment dominated. This was more than a sports controversy, it was a moral reckoning. From locker rooms to Capitol Hill, the echo of Barkley's blunt declaration still lingered. "You can't fix the game." It was no longer just commentary, it was a collective cry for redemption. Inside the schemes, how the betting and poker rings operated. Director Kash Patel characterized the probe as an NBA insider trading saga, comparing the mechanics to securities abuse transposed onto athletic competition. At its core was a scheme built on non-public operational intelligence advance alerts about availability, intended minute allocations, and planned early exits. Recipients used that privileged data to place targeted player prop wagers, often unders on scoring, rebounds, or assists, then parceled proceeds among participants. Operators employed intermediaries to relay information, encrypted messaging to hide intent, and multiple wagering accounts to distribute risk and avoid detection. They frequently cashed out through offshore bookmakers, prepaid instruments, and layered transfers to conceal ownership of proceeds. U.S. Attorney Joseph Nocella Jr. described the technical evidence that tied tips to transactions, chronological login trails, time-stamped encrypted texts, and synchronous shifts in market odds. Investigators reconstructed chains of bets using suspicious activity reports, KYC documents from fintech platforms, and blockchain traces where cryptocurrencies were used. Statistical models highlighted repeating patterns, spikes in concentrated wagering minutes before public disclosures, allowing prosecutors to link insiders, bettors, and beneficiaries. Cooperating witnesses and intercepted calls further corroborated the flows, turning disparate signals into a coherent evidentiary narrative that moved the case from conjecture toward prosecutable fact. The poker facet relied on sophisticated hardware and coordinated human signals. Allegations name Chauncey Billups and Damon Jones as celebrity attractors to private rooms where tables concealed card-reading devices. Decks were reportedly marked with inks visible only through special lenses. Automatic shufflers were modified to scan card order and transmit sequences to remote collaborators. An off-site controller would relay information to a designated table coordinator who used subtle cues. Glass taps, watch adjustments, or hand motions to orchestrate play. Organizers engineered initial small losses to lull marks into a false sense of security before extracting large pots in later rounds, converting trust and star power into a mechanism for systematic theft. Behind the apparatus, organized crime elements provided muscle logistics and financial laundering. Teams installed equipment, trained compliant dealers, secured venues, and enforced collections when target losses went unpaid. Proceeds flowed through shell entities, layered bank transfers, and fragmented crypto conversions before consolidation. While the wagering and poker branches operated differently on the surface, both exploited asymmetric information and technological edges, then obscured trails via intermediaries and falsified paperwork. Prosecutors signaled that additional names could surface as investigations continue, underscoring the ongoing scope of the inquiry. Public and regulators demand reforms in monitoring data sharing and vendor oversight to prevent similar schemes from resurfacing. Trials will test both technical proofs and the legal framing of modern betting misconduct and accountability. The aftermath. Can the NBA recover its reputation? The FBI and Department of Justice's investigation, led by Joseph Nocella Jr. and Kash Patel, exposed a far-reaching conspiracy that tied professional basketball figures to illegal betting and mafia-backed poker rings. At its center were Terry Rozier, Chauncey Billups, and Damon Jones, individuals whose arrests redefined the boundaries between athletic influence and criminal exploitation. The schemes combined insider leaks, technological manipulation, and money laundering, generating millions in illicit profit. Victims included unsuspecting gamblers and even stars like LeBron James, whose private health details were weaponized for gain. As indictments multiplied, partnerships with major sportsbooks such as FanDuel and DraftKings came under scrutiny, forcing regulators and fans alike to question the integrity of professional sports. For Commissioner Adam Silver and the NBA, the scandal represents an existential crisis. The league that once prided itself on transparency must now rebuild faith amid congressional pressure and public skepticism. Silver has pledged sweeping reforms, stricter gambling oversight, data audits, and expanded collaboration with federal agencies, but the damage runs deep. The FBI calls it a watershed moment for accountability. Supporters call for redemption. Whether the NBA can restore its credibility after this betrayal remains uncertain, yet its response will define not just the league's future, but the public's belief that basketball can still stand for fairness in a world increasingly ruled by odds and wagers. As the dust settles over the arrests of Terry Rozier, Chauncey Billups, and Damon Jones, the question now isn't just about guilt or innocence, it's about trust. Can the NBA truly rise from a scandal that has shaken its foundation? Or has the game's integrity been forever compromised by greed and influence? Commissioner Adam Silver promises reform, but fans remain divided. Is redemption still possible for a league built on glory yet stained by deception? Let us know what you think this is. Legends of Black Excellence, and the debate has only just begun.